so much has been happening today, right? There is an article on Think Progress from this morning. New York's primary is not going smoothly so far. That is to say it lightly. In addition to, Ben mentioned that there were, I believe it was 60,000 Democrats in Brooklyn that were reported purged for some random reason from the system. Well, actually today, de Blasio has said now that the number is actually more like 120,000. 120,000 registered Dems purged in Brooklyn. Why? Why? Anybody know? Because I don't know. I don't get it. These are registered Dems. These are people who either have been Dems, have voted, not people who are just not inactive, who were not active, not people who were inactive, not people who were independents and didn't know the rules. Because that's there's some confusion about all this stuff, and I'm not surprised, extremely discouraged, very disheartened with so-called liberals who have taken to parsing and splitting hairs about what is and is not voter suppression, right? Well, you're not taking a poll test, so it's not real voter suppression. Or, well, you're not in the deep South and you don't have to travel 5 hours to vote, so that's not real voter suppression. Really? We're going to put a litmus test on what is real suppression and what isn't? Like, this type of stuff is, like, really ridiculous. People who are registered, people who are active Dems, since we want to put a real, we have all this real Dem talk. People who are quote-unquote real Dems were not allowed to vote today. Or they were told they had to vote by affidavit ballot, okay? And likely it's, in a lot of cases, those ballots do not ever even get counted. So in all your chest poking and you got to be right, so you must know everything, attitude, some of these, Twitter jockeys and so-called journalists, like, you've just been spending all day telling 100,000, 20,000 people in Brooklyn, not to mention those in the Bronx and upstate and elsewhere that received either confusing information or found themselves purged. It happened all over the state, but there was this huge concentration in Brooklyn. And it's a problem. It is a serious problem when we tell people, like, well, your issue is not as important as these other people's issues, so we don't care that you couldn't vote. On the flip side, some of y'all who just now realized that voter suppression happens in America, I need y'all to sit all the way down. And please, 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 my dear liberal white friends, stop trying to argue what's going on with, like, independence and stuff in New York. Stop trying to use black people and our historical issues with voting rights. Stop trying to use that as your justification. Like, seriously, I'm going to ask you to stop. I don't need you to argue on my behalf because, quite honestly, a lot of you all have not paid attention to voter issues that have been happening since the gutting of the VRA. You got Scott in Wisconsin. I mean, all of that stuff that had actually happened, I believe, in 2011. But they have been tied up in litigation all this time, which is why this was the first time the Wisconsin law was even at issue in an election. So there's a lot of stuff that is happening, and what people, I hope, are now understanding is you have to pay attention. This is the price you pay for not being engaged in the process. You can say that the system is crooked and it's rigged and it's not for us, but when you sit outside the system and do not pay attention to what is going on or to the plight of others, and then you whine when it's happening to you, I'm kind of not very sympathetic. Because, I was a registered Democrat at 18, right? When I first got the right to vote, I became a registered Democrat. I was so happy to do my service. I used to look at my mother crazy when she voted Green Party. I'm like, what is your problem? There's no point, blah, blah, blah. When I moved to West Virginia, I became, I believe the term is unaffiliated. I was very proud of that. But before I did so, I made sure I understood whether or not I would still be able to vote. Because like Bernie, even though I still voted 96, 95% of the time with Democrats, I did not feel like I had to be a part of their party. And West Virginia Dems, they're only a little bit better than West Virginia Republicans. They're crazy. No diss to any of my friends who are listening, but y'all are. Y'all let people like Manchin and now Jim Justice come and run. Really hoping Booth Goodwin becomes the next governor of West Virginia, but that's a whole other topic. So I made sure I understood the rules. I have other friends who are independent other places. Here in Georgia, I don't it's a little different. We have open primary here, but I still made sure I understood the rules before I chose not to declare dim, right? You have to make sure you understand what's going on in the process. You can't be, and you Facebook and Twitter election law experts, right? You all are running around giving people information that's not even accurate. So while on the one hand, the lawsuit that went forward today with election justice, kudos to you guys for trying, right? Because someone needed to do something, because we have all these DINs, we have all these groups that are normally the ones that traditionally get out there, that deal with getting out the vote, that deal with, voter suppression issues. There's information out there, and we need to make sure we're sharing the correct information. So kudos to groups who have actually been doing this work and stuff, but for everyone sharing information like, see, independents were able to vote all along, all they had to do was this. No, you're wrong. That's a closed primary means independents can't vote. But the issue primarily where people have been purged who were registered as Democrats. Either they have always been Democrats and they were always active voters. There was an incident out Clinton Hill, Lafayette, Waverly Place, around that area. An entire block was purged. Now, these are people who regularly vote. They're Dems. They regularly vote. And the poll workers were even surprised. They're like, wait a minute, you guys, we don't even see y'all in the book. There's someone out in Queens who had a testimony earlier today. Same thing. I always vote. I'm a Dem. These are Democrats, right? So when we have people on Twitter, in the news, it's like a triumvirate of pro-Hillary reporters and stuff today, all over Twitter, bashing people for trying to get this right to vote today because well, why don't people understand that rules? And, oh my God, they're closed primaries for a reason, and our party has decided that it's going to have it this way, and that's what it is. I'm not really interested. I'm not here. I'm really not here to listen to your justification of this screwed up system, okay? Closed primaries are a problem, and they're a problem for two reasons. One, in this case, the closed primary is a problem because the deadline is in October before most people even know what is even going on. If my primary is not until April, why in the hell do I have to declare my party affiliation in October? Like, even if we're talking about Republicans, right? Because back in October, you didn't even know what was happening with that circus crazy show. And what if, as a Republican, you were going to decide that, this party has gone to pieces. I don't want nothing to do with it. I'd rather see what the Dems have going on. You have killed your ability to engage new voters and get new people in the process. But you know what? Y'all don't care about that, because in a closed primary, you clearly you're fine with low voter turnout because you're going to try later on in the general once you have your chosen candidate, right? And that's the problem we have now. We're having a serious issue because people are waking up and realizing, like, wow, wait a minute. This is a system that's not fair. Yes, it's been in place. Yes, people should understand the rules. But the issue of fundamental fairness cannot be ignored, disregarded, or shut down just because you're on the quote-unquote winning team. I don't care what the outcome is today, right? The bottom line is, not only did you have people who were not aware, there are people who probably just in the past few months became politically engaged and involved. Like, I saw a testimony from one woman today, and there's some really great articles in Think Progress, some of the local New York, outlets and stuff. There was an issue in upstate New York, and I think it was Greece, right outside of Rochester, where there were postcards sent out for next month's, I think it was their Board of Education elections, maybe. They sent out postcards for a different polling location. So for whatever reason, these people vote at a completely different place for this other election, and many people went there and then had to go back to their actual correct election place, right? So that's confusing. And there was already issues with confusion because people who had registered to vote, they sent out the New York State primary dates as a reminder, which is some months down the line, and not the presidential one that was today. So there's a lot of confusion. Now de Blasio, oh my God, this is a travesty. Oh my God, what is going on? This is not right. So they're going to investigate. They're going to do an audit of the New York City Board of Elections, at least. That doesn't really say much for other stuff. And, I know we have Michael Solomon from the Progressive Army. He had his own story that he shared with us today. Last night he did call in and talk to Ben about kind of some of the issues that they were having. So Michael actually did have to go before a court and get a court order today. He had to go before a judge and get a court order to be able to vote at an actual machine. Unfortunately, his mother was not able to. She had like an hour commute to get to the court, and the county official in question went ahead without her, basically tanked her case, so she had to vote by affidavit ballot. And then with her, if they both weren't, Michael's case, they were different issues ultimately, and Michael had a bunch of documentation, including I think it was the Board of Elections acknowledged that it was actually their error, so that worked out in his favor. But it was a huge chunk of time out of his day. Thankfully, he was able actually to take the time to spend hours waiting to see a judge, right, to be able to vote. But how many people could not do that? Because a lot of these people who voted via affidavit ballot today, they probably could have been seen before a judge as well and gotten a court order to be able to vote in a machine to be definitely counted. There was another machine, I think it was Brunswick, Brooklyn today. There were locations that opened 2 hours late. There were locations that the machines were broken. There's another issue, I think it's Brunswick, in Brooklyn. The scanner was not working, so they were like, oh, well, the votes are not going to be counted today. Huh? And an excuse is, well, this is not new for New York City. Turnout's really high all over New York State, by the way, but this is not new for New York City. I don't understand what the hell is going on with people. And here's the problem we have again, right? Well, these are closed primaries and these are for real Democrats only. Why the hell do you people get to choose for us who are going to be our choices in November? Like, that's not fair. That's like pulling together all the cool kids in school. That's like pulling together all the populars and letting them choose, like, and make some really big decision and say, okay, well, this is what we're going to do. You guys vote between choice A and choice B. No, this is not Mean Girls. This is not some other variation of a Disney movie. And, sorry, everybody. Got a little riled up and messed up the microphone. But, we are rounding up, and I'm so sorry that I did not make time for calls today. But there's just way too much going on, and it's hot. I don't work myself up. But I appreciate everyone who takes the time to come in. I was supposed to take a break and accept some calls, but, like, there's been a lot of crap going on in New York today, I don't really, no matter what happens, I just want to give a shout out to everybody who has worked so hard. If you are a volunteer, you know what I'm saying, give yourself a pat on the back, a round of applause, hug yourself tight. I mean, the staff in New York, shout out to Michelle and Taylor and, like, everybody that has been really doing it in New York, across New York State, folks at Upstate, Rochester, Buffalo, you guys, this is what it's all about. So people being active, engaged, and involved in the process. I don't care how many haters you run into on Twitter. Y'all stop arguing with them low info trolls, because that is taking away energy that we need to be rounding up and rallying the masses, because we need to keep plugging away. It don't matter what they say. It don't matter if they talk about your mama. They only words. Like, seriously, if you really have to correct factual inconsistencies, go for it. But yeah, I mean, New York, full of issues, and why, I don't understand why we get to these election days and it's like, wow, well, we just had so much turnout. Huh? You didn't know you were going to have high turnout? You had massive voter registration. You had high voter registration, right? So you didn't think that would mean high voter turnout? No? Really? You have really enthusiastic, 28,000 people were in Prospect Park this weekend. I don't know if any of you are in New York or from New York or whatever, you ever been to Prospect Park, but that's my childhood, right? When Central Park, Prospect Park, all that, it's so yeah. So pay attention, and, like, seriously though, it's not an issue. The lawsuit today, ultimately, people were told that they had to go before an actual judge in their county where they voted to get a court order to be able to vote. So, which is actually something that is a lesser known provision on the books that people could do. And those who were able to, had the time, did so, and many were successful. But we really do need to look at the system of voting in this country. We're supposedly the quote-unquote greatest democracy on earth, but we are riddled with issues. We have low voter turnout. We have voter suppression tactics happening. There is no reason, there's no valid reason for Democrats to be dropped from the polls the way they are. what has happened, I mean, what has happened is just ridiculous. So, um, I don't know. I know people were saying, what about internal affairs looking into this? Are they corrupt? There's going to be an investigation, at least in New York City, and their board of elections. Mayor De Blasio did have some statements about that, and I'll make sure I tweet out all these links if you guys want to look for them to retweet them. But it's, yeah. So today was a day.